Before we met the man who not only ignited his guitar, but the fans with awe at the Monterey Pop Festival on June 18, 1967, he went on a journey to have such a lasting legacy. Jimi is known as the revolutionary rock artist during the 1960s that changed music for all eternity. But what people don't know is that he inspired a following of people to be against the Vietnam War and to support the anti-violence civil rights movement. Jimi was born November 27, 1942, to Al and Lucille Hendrix. His dad was in the military until Jimi was 2 years old. Lucille left him to be raised by his aunt until then. His parents split up at a young age and his siblings were torn apart. His mom passed away while he was a teenager, creating difficulty for his future. Al, his father, was an alcoholic and wasn't stable or supportive and beat his children frequently. His younger brother, Leon, was in and out of foster care all through his life. As Jimi was older, they allowed him to stay with his dad. Jimi never had a proper home and showed this experience throughout his life. Jimi, from a young age, had a love for music. He grew up in the gloomy and poverty-stricken streets of Seattle. But the struggle for him to have his hands on a guitar were difficult. He skipped school constantly to learn from some of the best blues and R&B artists around. He played in the background of a variety of small bands, but it never got him anywhere. Jimi began to get in some trouble and had to either go to jail or take a 2-year term in the military. Jimi was a patriotic man, so he joined up as soon as he could. After being in the 101st Airborne for so long and scared to go into Vietnam, since African Americans were put on the front lines and killed the most frequently. That topic of African Americans being killed on the front lines became a large topic in Jimi's music later on. Jimi then got out and started to tour with bands like Little Richard and the Isley Brothers as a background guitarist. But he wanted to be the main attraction. He learned how racial separation defined music as he experienced the most racial inequality situations while touring through the Chitlin circuit. Here now are some clips of Jimi playing for Little Richard. He is on the left side. Since Jimi wanted to take the initiative, he headed up to New York City for the first time to front his very own band. Keith Richards' girlfriend would soon spot Jimi at the Cafe Wah and decided to contact all the managers she could after seeing his incredible abilities both as a musician and an entertainer. She was able to contact Chaz Chandler, former bassist of The Animals. He signed Jimi right after he performed his version of Hey Joe. Chaz wanted to bring Jimi over to London, as the music scene was the easiest to get started in. Jimi landed in London on September 21, 1966. He made his big debut in London, where they were more understanding of other cultures at the time. Here is where he recorded his first album, which remained on the charts for 33 weeks and peaked at number 2. Eric Clapton, the biggest guitarist in London at the time, was showed up by Jimi, not only by his talent of playing the guitar, but due to his showmanship. He became a big hit, but wanted to ignite his popularity in America. Here we go back to where Jimi got his star fandom as the wild, raw, and sexual guitarist at the Monterey Pop Festival. His fans were mostly white, and Jimi was easily accepted into the culture, almost if they forgot his race. Jimi said, "I try to use my music to move these people to act." As Jimi was a shy boy all throughout his life, he could only say what he wanted when he had his guitar in his hand. He used this to his benefit, as if all of his songs have a double meaning, either as a storytelling of his childhood or as a protest against the Vietnam War or for the civil rights movement. It is hard to decipher if it was the Vietnam War or civil rights movement, but in an interview with Janie, his sister and CEO of Experience Hendrix, says it was for both. He supported equal love and rights for all races and genders alike. Jimi was a big fan of Martin Luther King Jr., as he had the same anti-violence beliefs. When Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated on April 4, 1968, Jimi wrote House Burning Down for him. This song was on his third album, Electric Ladyland, released on October 16, 1968, which stayed 2 weeks on the U.S. charts at number 1. The Black Panther Party wanted Jimi to join the movement and make a statement about them. Jimi didn't want to cause problems and didn't support the violence they were creating, but while performing a live version of Machine Gun, he said a comment about them that both supported the revolution for civil rights and against the Vietnam War.
We'd like to dedicate this one to such a draggy scene that's going on. All the soldiers that are fighting in Chicago and Milwaukee and New York. Oh yes, and all the soldiers fighting in Vietnam. I'd like to do a thing called Machine Gun.
The most prominent showing of being against the Vietnam War and for the Civil Rights Movement was during Woodstock on August 18, 1969. This is where the legendary performance of Star Spangled Banner was performed. During this performance, his style of playing, along with his use of effects, created sounds that many interpreted as the sounds of bombs and gunfire. Many people were outraged, and his producer was worried it would start a riot. This was one of the ways Jimi tried to edge African Americans to be accepted in the patriotic field, but also be non-violent at the same time. In Jimi's world, race did not exist. He did not feel segregated. He loved his people. He didn't want to be known just for being black, but he didn't want to be forgotten as not being black. He wanted African Americans to love his music and embrace how he was taking blues and R&B and showing any race it could be loved. He said once, "I want to show them that music is universal, that there is no white rock or black rock." Jimi would be the victim of racism once he achieved fame, when he became frowned upon from the African American community for playing white man's music. He also experienced criticism while in the experience, since he was the leading musician and his background players were white. This also has been said to make Jimi very uncomfortable, since during this time many African Americans were fighting for equality and black power, while he was playing in a white band to mostly white crowds. 2 weeks after Woodstock, Jimi went to go play a show in Harlem for his people, but did not have a warm welcome as they threw eggs and bottles at them while they performed. Near the end of his career, it seems as if he was also trying to reach out more to the black audience by forming the Band of Gypsies, a group consisting of all black members, and also writing more songs about protest and equality. Jimi and his work would stand the test of time as an influence and inspiration to all African Americans, including other musicians, showing them that they couldn't be held down by the world and that they would fight for their freedom. Many rock artists such as Eddie Van Halen, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and Bob Dylan have stated Jimi Hendrix as a major influence and believed he drastically changed music along with views over race and equality. Bob Dylan at a recent award ceremony said, "Oh, and can't forget Jimi Hendrix. I have to thank Jimi. 2. I wish he was here. He saw music as a religion that all people could follow and enjoy together." Jimi's aim was to break down the barriers of white and black music that he had to cross to get where he was. He wanted everyone to be equal and love their country. He played the Star Spangled Banner to show that even a black man deserves freedom and the right to love his country. He knew that it wouldn't change instantly. It took many years after his death in September 18, 1970. Jimi was a groundbreaking artist that changed the way music was perceived. He inspired generations to break the chains that held him back. Without him, music would still be segregated. His legacy of being the most prominent equal rights rock artist and protester will live on forever. The man that only had a musical career for 4 years changed the next 40 to come. In Jimi's words, let's just keep playing the record.
Eventually